what's going to happen is going to be a default on our obligations. And the question is are we going to default because we're going to stand back and let the debts collapse, which was sort of the deflationary austerity side of things? Or are we going to inflate our way out by just printing so much money to meet the debt obligations, we just kill the currency? And if you had to force me to choose between one of those two, I would pick the latter. I think politically, inflating is always the more preferential way, even though you get to the same destination at the end.
Right. So again, there's an advantage of getting older, is all I'm saying. And Jim Rickards and I were just laughing our butts off. I said, we've heard all this before, but we're down to the last 4 minutes. And the question is, are you going to keep doing the same thing? I think that's our question today. But I'll give somebody else some other ideas how bad this is and why being old might be better, is that we are just coming out of the longest bull run in history, 11 years. Started in 2011. And at 2011, I made the biggest fortunes of my life because that was the MBS, mortgage-backed securities, and the CDO crashes, the real estate crashed. And I backed up the truck and I borrowed $300 million to buy the best real estate all across the Southwest. I'm watching all these young guys, they entered the longest bull market in history. They were walking around in diapers in 2008, and now they're on YouTube with their channels and they're talking about this, they're talking about that. They've never seen a crash. And this is going to be the biggest crash in world history. And these guys are giving advice. So it's my way of saying to your audience, find out how old they were when they were wearing diapers. And be careful who you're taking advice from. How old are they? Because this is the longest bull market in history. I look at some of these young kids, and I own some Bitcoin, I own some Ethereum, but they're all saying the same thing. This time it's different, and Bitcoin's crashed. The Federal Reserve Bank, I can't believe that. Well, my question to everybody is this: can the Fed print oil? Can the Fed print gasoline? Can it print food? But everybody sits there and they've been brainwashed by Wall Street to go, do as the Fed tells you to do. Well, you got to be kidding me. Those guys are the three stooges, Janet Yellen, Biden, and Powell. You got to be kidding me. Why would you listen to them?
Just like they eventually created the inflation they were looking for, but just got way too much of it, I think they're going to get the same demand destruction they're looking for, just way too much of it again. I don't know.
The biggest thing out of being old, because I remember Volcker saying it's going to crush, so he raised interest rates, right? So Powell is now channeling the spirit of Volcker. And when Volcker crushed inflation, debt to GDP was 30%. And today it's 125% if you believe the numbers. So if he channels Volcker, and the other thing about history will tell you this: there's never been a soft landing. It's more Fed talk. I'm just saying, be careful the age of the person you're listening to, because most of these guys on YouTube today were in diapers in 2008. And this market crash, I've made more money in the last 3 years in my whole life. And so that's what I want to talk about with you today, is that there's other ways of looking at investing, but to think that Powell is going to save you, when, as you may know, the reverse repo market is running at $2 trillion a day today.
Right.
$2 trillion a day, and people are listening to Powell? You got to be kidding me. And look at Janet Yellen. My God. I own no stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs. I do not touch paper. I'm not saying that you shouldn't, but I'm saying people have been brainwashed by the Fed, the Treasury. Go to school, get a job, pay your taxes, get a high-paying job, and invest for the long term in a well-diversified portfolio of stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs. It was in 1974 when I came back from Vietnam, a two-tour Marine helicopter pilot. I saw communism at work. It was not pretty. And I come back in 1974, they passed ERISA. ERISA stands for 401k right now, or IRA. And I went, my God, they're funneling my generation, the boomers, into the stock market. And they don't know anything about money. And in 1974, the biggest exodus was school teachers suddenly becoming financial planners. I watched it in horror. And today we have baby boomers who are hoping the stock market stays up in their 401k just as Social Security goes bust. You think that's an accident? That's all I'm saying. I'm just a Marine. I'm a dumbass Marine lieutenant, flew the gunship, went down 3 times. But today I listen to this bullshit and I go, oh my God, how can we be that stupid? Because we went to school, we did as we're told. Don't fight the Fed. Do as the Fed tells you. Invest for the long term, a well-diversified portfolio of stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs. And don't worry, Powell is now channeling Volcker. When the debt to GDP is 120%, you got to be kidding me. So when they were dropping the interest rates, I thought I went to heaven because I buy apartment houses. I own 13,000 apartment houses. Every time the Fed dropped the interest rates, it jacked the value of my properties up, but I also improved the properties and I refinance out. So today I own no money in any of my properties. 13,000 units, all throwing cash. Cash flow, positive. It's also called an infinite return. And I got hammered by the New York Times because Rich Dad never went to school, but my poor dad was a PhD. Who stood for poor, helpless, and desperate. He was in charge of labor unions. He was pro-tax. He was pro-tax to rich. Sounds like AOC to me. Do you know what I mean? I'm listening to this and going, my family, oh my God. So in 1965, I leave Hawaii, where I went to school. I go to school in New York, and my economics teacher is a West Point graduate who flew B-17s in World War II. And instead of having us read Malthus and Ricardo, he had us read Marx, Stalin, and Mao. And the theory at military school is know your enemy. So I understand Marx fairly well, the Communist Manifesto, 1848. That was 1965, 1966 was my first trip to Vietnam. I'm carrying bombs to Vietnam on a victory ship sailing out of San Francisco Harbor. And then I saw communism first. I'm like, my God, I could see the future. We're eventually overrun by communists. And so in 1930, the Frankfurt School out of Germany, which is Marx's institution, sent teachers to Columbia University's Teachers College in 1930. That was stage one of communism. And then they had to influence our academics first. And I lost so many friends who were all Marine. The saddest days of my life is standing on the deck of my aircraft carrier, and my friends don't come back. You never see them again. Their aircrafts are shot down. They're still MIA. And I get spit on, hit by eggs and all this stuff. But that woke me up, so I started studying more. What is happening in America? So as I said, I use debt now to get rich, and then I invest in hard assets. So that's what we can talk about. My point of view here is, ladies and gentlemen, I would question what you've been taught from school. That's all I'm saying. In a bull market, even idiots feel smart.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I think that's one of the best sayings I've ever heard, because I'm listening to all these idiots, after 2011, the market crashed in '08 because the repo market went bad. And the repo market is the credit of Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns was bad. So they hammered, it's a long story. My friends are all inside that world. But then when it came back out, they just started pumping money. And what they did was they kept printing more money to save a bad economy. It was already crashing again in 2011, but they kept printing money. And today we're going to pay that price.
They are beginning to bump into some sort of immovable limits here. And again, we'll find out pretty soon whether that prediction's right or not.
I use debt because debt is tax-free money. What I did was I rehabbed my apartment, 13,000 of them. I just kept buying more with the cash flow, and I'd refinance out as interest rates drop. So I'm in good shape now. Then I took them, set all interest rates right now. So I use debt. I don't flip houses. Remember all those guys who were flipping?
Well, everybody flipped.
No, they were stupid. When the moment you flip, you have a tax consequence. I never flip. I finance out this tax-free money. And not only that, is when I started investing, I had to invest at 12% interest rates. And that's why I said being an old guy has its advantages, because these guys are crying the blues at 5%? Oh, give me a break. You should move to Gilligan's Island and play the ukulele or something, you know what I mean? Because every time I borrow more money to float my properties, there's three types of tax breaks. I got appreciation, depreciation, and amortization. So I zero out. So my cost of money is, my tax on debt is zero. But I don't have any plans on going to jail and dancing the hula for some guy. Do you know what I mean? So let's say I make $1 million. I have to buy a $4 million apartment house. Then appreciation, depreciation, amortization wipes out my income from my business. The Fed cannot print beef. So I started, when Biden took the Keystone XL pipeline off, my oil I was selling from the ground, which is a tax break also, went from $30 a barrel to $130 a barrel. Today it's like $120. Oh my God, this guy Biden is going to bankrupt us. I'm not saying him, but there's somebody who wants to bankrupt, because oil is the lifeblood of civilization. I worked for Standard Oil of California as a tanker officer when I graduated from school. I understand oil. I was on the Alaska pipeline and all this. I'm like, he's screwing us. So when he raises inflation, the poor and middle class will go broke. And that was just done as soon as he was being done before he took office. And so I'm looking at this guy's going to sell America down the drain. I'm not saying it's him, but somebody wants us to go broke. And I'm watching this going, oh my God, so what else can so I have oil wells. I get tax breaks for those because I don't invest in oil stocks. I work for Standard Oil, but I don't invest in Standard Oil. I invest in the oil in the ground. I'm a wildcatter. Everybody says don't do it. I don't recommend it, but I like doing it. Gold mines don't do it. I like doing it. But the biggest thing of all is food. And so my friend was a school system in California. He had to run from California because he got tired of being in the People's Republic of California. So he moved to Wyoming and bought this huge ranch. And he says, oh my God, I never knew there was so much money in Wagyu cattle. I went, what?